Hello everybody. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Bryan Glick. I'm the editor. My day job is as editor-in-chief of Computer Weekly. I'm also responsible for editorial for TechTarget across EMEA, and also responsible for a lot of what Computer Weekly is doing around content targeting Southeast Asia as well. In other words, I'm here from the editorial side. I'm the one who's not meant to do the selling, but we're here to give you some particularly interesting insights. Now, over the last hour, you've been hearing a lot about these elusive things called prospects and these mythical things called leads. Now, let me tell you, leads are people too, and we have two of those people up here joining us on the panel today. Introduce you to Louise McCarthy. Louise is the Director of IT Transformation at the European Bank of Reconstruction and Development, and also to Matt Valentine. Matt is the Head of Digital at the law firm Eversheds. Some of you who might have been to this event in the past and have listened into some of these panels will know the sort of format. Essentially what we're going to do over the next 45 minutes or so is give Louise and Matt an opportunity to tell you a little bit about how they work, how they buy, how they do research to find out information to help them in those buying decisions, the sort of relationships that they have with suppliers like yourselves, how they use the information that you provide, their perspective, if you like, on the sales and marketing information that they receive from you. And just to make it interesting as well this year, Matt in particular coming from more of a digital background, Louise from more of a traditional IT background as well. So it'd be interesting to explore and contrast perhaps any differences between how the sort of emerging Chief Digital Officer community perhaps does things or thinks about things a little differently from the traditional CIO type community. So I've got a number of questions that I'm going to run through with Matt and Louise, and that'll probably take about half an hour. At the end of that, we'll open up to the floor and give you an opportunity to ask some questions of these guys as well. I really would urge you to take the opportunity to do so. It's a fantastic opportunity to really pick the brains of some of the people who are ultimately the targets of what you're trying to do. So to kick off, Louise, perhaps I'll come to you first. Opportunity, if you could just introduce yourself to the audience as well, Louise, tell them a little bit about what you do and your background, and lead that into perhaps an introduction to what you at European Bank of Reconstruction and Development are your sort of IT priorities over the next 12 months or so.
Okay, thank you, Brian. So, as Brian said, I'm Louise McCarthy and I'm the Director of IT Transformation at European Bank of Reconstruction. I'm in my 8th week now, so it's relatively new here for me. My background is I've generally undertaken probably about 6 or 7 large major transformations. So I go in and shake up organisations, mainly where they've got a burning platform. So probably just a prime example of that one is I went into HMRC, where its IT costs were 1.8 billion. This was about 4 years ago. And I managed to successfully break the largest outsourcing contract in government and reduce their IT costs by £700,000. Now, probably many of you in the room are probably, obviously suppliers, probably don't maybe hear that as being a great success, but internally, and as a taxpayer, you should actually see that as a great success for your own money. I've undertaken a very similar exercise at Aviva, Specsavers, Transport for London, and Virgin Media. And so I've recently moved into European Bank of Reconstruction. And my role really, and here in answer to the question, is my priorities is actually to turn a basic, straightforward IT-run organisation and make it more digitalised. So we have just commenced the digitalisation journey, so we're on a transformation at the moment. The bank itself was originally a sunset bank, so therefore it was only going to last for 15 years. 25 years later, the bank is now doing so well. The only unfortunate thing in IT is we never invested in IT. And at the same time is the digital agenda's hitting us hard as well. So we've got to look at, in terms of technology, looking at all of our back office, front office, our customer journey processes, and automate them and digitalise them, and just overhaul everything in the bank. So technology-wise, we are looking for all the tools and technology that can help us take us on that journey. I think the biggest thing for us is we've, as an organisation, run independently in silos. So the whole IT estate has been built in silos. It doesn't talk to itself, it's not integrated, the processes are dropping in and out. And our customers are hugely frustrated. So we're trying to find technology that cuts across the whole bank now, rather than just in the silos. So I think that's just a journey we're beginning to start at the moment, but it's very exciting. There's so much to do for me, and there's so much innovation opportunity as well for suppliers to support me on that journey.
Okay, thanks, Louise. I think that's definitely what you'd call a lead, for any of you in case you're not sure. Matt, same question to you. Introduce yourself.
I don't want to buy anything. I'm Matt. I have been... I'm an old timer. I've had 3 months as head of digital at Evershed. And my mum still thinks it's some sort of garden centre, which is a worry. My background has been many and varied, and that's been an intentional thing through my career. I've worked quite a lot in traditional IT, and I started my career working in IT departments. I worked at the BBC, at BBC Worldwide, the commercial arm, through the 90s until 2004. So digital was something that happened to the marketing industry back then. To the media industry back then, and I think actually to a great extent the media industry still doesn't know what digital means to this day. But I've been involved in digital transformation for the best part of the last 20 years or so. I think post that I then went to Thomson Reuters for a few years. I went to work for a management development company doing management training for a few years as well, because I wanted to be able to get experience of helping to change organisations without there being an expectation that it was IT that was the solution, because it isn't. And then I went to work as the head of technology for a global marketing agency called Imagination. If you ever want events running, Imagination are the people to see.
That's a lead.
Yeah, that's a lead for them. From that, I then went to actually go to work on the supply side of the industry in a marketing role. I went to work for Microsoft in their evangelism group for 2 years. I had the auspicious pleasure of being responsible for trying to sell the concept of Windows 8 into the marketing agency industry as a credible consumer platform. I'd like to say that it wasn't my fault. And then I spent 3 years working as an independent consultant and working with all sorts of organisations around what does this marriage of digital and communications and marketing and people change mean, and that's where I find myself now 3 months into trying to work out what digital means for a law firm. I think there are some interesting dynamics in professional services and partnerships, and there are interesting dynamics in professional organisations that are special in the many senses of that term, and that actually part of my priority over the next 12 months is actually working out what the real appetite for what I would see as being digital transformation is within a partnership law firm. There's also probably quite a bit of traditional technology. Part of the agenda around the digital side, though, is about how do we create an organisation which is full of makers. How do we make everybody in the organisation able to take an idea that they might have, because they're all relatively smart people, and be able to bring it to some sort of stage of prototype for themselves where they can test for themselves whether this is a good idea or not, so that I don't have to go through the pain of telling them that it isn't. That's a massive change in the way in which people think about technology and management of technology. It's also a massive change in the way in which organisations think about how they sell technology into potential customers, because as Salesforce have proven over the last 10 years, actually it's much better to not sell to technology people, but you will become the bête noire of the technology people if you try to sell to the people who aren't the technology people, because most of them still are geared around having control, because that's part of the governance function of IT. So there's working that out, working out some traditional IT projects is kind of my fun and games for the next 12 months.
Cool, thanks Matt. Okay, so let's have a little look at your perspectives on suppliers and their relationships with you. Louise, to you first. What in your experience do suppliers do well? What do they do not so well when they are trying to market to you?
Okay, so I find this an interesting conversation actually, and I actually frequently speak to suppliers because my background is commercial, and one of the things I like with suppliers, or they do well in terms of marketing, is they understand my business needs and what's going to drive my business forward, or understand my business's vision. How many of you understand the vision of your business and where they're trying to get to? Because direct marketing needs to be around understanding that, and I have so many suppliers just selling me the next big buzzy thing that they might have, and I'm thinking, well, how does that relate to me in terms of my business needs, and how's that going to drive my business forward? So I think the suppliers that really work well for me in partnership really understand my business needs and my vision and where the company's trying to get in the next 3, 4, 5 years, and then find solutions to solve those business needs. I don't want a solution to something that's not going to solve a problem I don't have. So I think that's really where I think that these suppliers can focus. There's been an example many years ago when cloud became the big buzzword, and a major big IT supplier, beginning with I, but I won't say the rest of it, came and tried selling me this cloud, and I was thinking, well, great, but what's it going to do? How's it going to work? And yeah, I'm quite excited about it, but they couldn't actually commercialise it because it was so in its infancy. They got me really excited about it and then couldn't translate it into a real product that I can actually buy as well. So if there is something you've got there, it can't be just that blue sky thinking, because if you get a customer biting and they want it and it's really exciting, it's going to take their business forward, then you need to be able to turn it into a real product that they can buy quickly.
Okay, Matt?
Suppliers who do well are those that build relationships, and building relationships based around the people in the organisations in which they're building, and are looking for the long term, because actually your chances of being able to find somebody who is going to make a significant purchasing investment at the time at which they're going to make that purchasing investment are slim. And whilst the technology to be able to do things like retargeting, which is possibly the most needy form of advertising imaginable, is increasingly getting there, actually, when you're doing business-to-business selling at any sort of scale, it's about relationships. And I don't think that's going to change. Getting people to get to places where you can build relationships might be where you need to put the effort in to be able to use the technology to be able to help you find that. And not talking about themselves. Suppliers who want to find out about me as a potential client or customer, rather than talking about them and their products, are more likely to be able to find a way for me to be able to find how I might use their products. In terms of what's done badly, I think not understanding the audience, not understanding the context. I'm involved with actually one of your competitors with CIO magazine. I write for them, and they have sort of 2 events every year where they'll have a room full of CIOs. First of all, don't think that CIOs are decision makers. They're not. There are no such thing as the ultimate decision maker in an organisation. You know, in your own organisation it doesn't exist. Why do you think it exists in your client organisations? And then at these CIO events, the other writers will have an almost sweepstake about which is going to be the sponsoring supplier who completely buggers up the mood of the evening. Because there will always be one, after we've had lots of conversations about how it's all about business and strategic alignment and how we're moving forward by being able to understand our customers, and then somebody who will have spent a lot of money will stand up on stage and do a product demo of something that's irrelevant. And it will be like tumbleweed going across as everybody gets their phones out and starts tweeting about who are these idiots. And the impact that has on that very expensive brand investment just goes out immediately. You've got to find things to talk about with your customers that are relevant to the customer, and that will be about the customer and their markets and their customers, not about your technology. Get the conversation going, and then it might be that there can be something out of that your product will fit.
Okay, thank you guys. So nonetheless, these guys all have extensive marketing budgets. One hopes that they are spending on trying to target yourselves and your peers. When you're putting together your IT strategy, when you're putting together purchasing plans and spending priorities, which you both said you're actively doing at the moment over the next 12 months, to what extent, if at all, how does the typical product marketing pieces that you see from suppliers actually influence the decisions that you're making at that early strategy and purchase planning stage?
So I mentioned, first of all, understanding the vision, and then from the vision we write the strategy. I think it's back to the partnership with suppliers. I work 2 ways. I think I work with a supplier innovating for me in terms of ideas that are going to help me solve my business problems. And that's through collaboration and understanding the business, and then producing marketing material to say, well, how can that solve my problem? What's the cost and benefits of that? So that's specifically around my business needs and the marketing around solving some of my business problems. There's other areas, once I've identified the strategy, either with or without IT partners, I work the other way. And some of the things that I love to do is, and I go in and do this in my first transformation, and again, block your ears if you're a supplier, but in transformation I like to free up some run cash from the IT budget to then reinvest that in terms of change and innovation and driving the business forward. So I tend to write to all of the suppliers on our base and ask them for a 10% saving up front now. Gives me a whole bunch of money, and then in exchange for that I would invite the partners to a supplier innovation day. And what we do there is we share our strategy with those partners so they can help us come up with solutions, innovative solutions that are targeted to those, to our vision and our strategy to move it forward. And then through a panel debate with the business users, we take those supplier ideas and evaluate them and then see whether there's something to move forward. So I think in answer to the question, the marketing side of marketing material, it is targeting marketing once you've got to know the business and you've been on that journey. But then once you've understood our strategy, then come back with things that are specifically going to solve our problem. And the things that all we really want to know, there's a few things that we're going to want to know is, what is it going to do for me? How quickly can you implement it? How much is it going to cost me? Where have you done it before where there's going to be some success? And what's my financial benefits? That's the sort of thing, all I really need to see in terms of marketing coming back to me and helping me solve my problems. And with that, you're gonna get the buy-in from the business users because they're going to get excited about it. In terms of the CFO and the finance, obviously they can see that there's going to be benefits associated to that. They're going to be excited. And the CIO is going to also look good in front of his business partners or his customers to see that they've been able to bring some ideas forward to help them move their business forward as well.
Matt, same to you, that early stage of the buying cycle.
Yeah, I think, personally, I don't think product marketing actually makes much odds now, for me, at a relatively senior level. Because that's not what I'm looking for. I'm looking for organisations that I can partner with who are willing to put, I hate the phrase skin in the game, but I can't think of anything better, but willing to be able to help, to be able to shape it. And so that comes back to that thing about building relationships, building trust, building understanding, and willing to be able to take a bit of a punt before I'm going to be signing any purchase orders. If I think about what product marketing is generally having influence on organisations today, I'd say that actually product marketing in the consumer world is having significant influence, and that's starting to, and actually for some years now has really shaped the a number of elements of the agenda within IT, within organisations. So whether it's, I guess the big push there was around cloud a few years ago with entire, railway stations taken over to it, which was obviously not focusing on an IT audience, but was focusing on a senior management audience, so that they'd go to their CIO and go, so what are we doing about this cloud thing? I think IBM Watson, I'm in awe of IBM to be able to use Watson as a brand to apply to just about anything for a set of products that nobody knows exactly what they are.
That was a prime example. I was exactly the same one as I was referring to.
It's remarkable how, but it is actually getting people talking. I know the chief executive at where I am at the moment is saying, well, what's happening about our robot lawyers?
Yeah.
I said they're, I don't know, based in Cardiff.
They're still in the cloud.
Oh, possibly, yeah. But that kind of marketing outside of the IT space, and I guess that there's the kind of evangelism stuff that I was involved with at Microsoft, which is still about how do you get the hearts and minds of the IT professionals, who will be an enormous, great barrier to any significant change of technology platforms. And again, though, that's not necessarily pushing the product, but pushing the brand and pushing the concepts behind things. But as I say, I think that actually for that mind share, that being able to get across to people who are likely to influence decisions within organisations now, you've got to be cognizant that you're competing with big consumer players now. I unfortunately had to spend most of yesterday sitting in a hospital, and deeply depressing experience for many reasons, but there was one glimmer of hope as all this paper was bouncing around for no apparent reason, and we sat waiting for yet another hour. And that one glimmer of hope was overhearing a conversation between, I think, nursing staff, and they were sitting outside of one of the rooms we were in. Obviously, one of them was about to leave, and one of them said, "Do you know what? Maybe we should set up a WhatsApp group for stuff that isn't work." I just thought that was really profound, because there you've got a group of people who are using a completely based consumer service to be able to obviously do stuff. So that's what your product marketing is now competing against. For many of the services that you're offering, you're competing against free-to-consume consumer services that people can use and enjoy using. And it's not mandated by the IT department, so it's even better. That's the challenge that IT departments have got, because we're in a competitive market now. So there's some really interesting dynamics going on around product marketing, and a B2B product marketing play now is competing directly with the rich cousin, B2C stuff. It's interesting times.
Okay, so moving down the buying cycle, if you like, through the buying process. Once you've identified a requirement, once you've got how do you go about it? If you initiated a project or something that is going to lead to making a buying decision or buying something from a supplier, what's the process you go through once you've got that requirement to get to the point of making a buying decision? And you both talked about how you're heavily involved in digital transformation in the organisations that you're in as well. Interested as well is if, and if so how, is that decision-making process changing in a digital world? Louise?
Yeah, so I mean, the basic simple things in terms of making decisions, obviously, does it solve the problem quickly within the cost and deliver the benefits we want? But then obviously what are the options? So you might have a solution, but there might be an alternative solution. So obviously we need to weigh up those decisions as well. But then it's understanding a little bit more about you as a supplier, because you might be the right price, you might give us the right commercial deal, you might give us the right flexibility in the commercial deal, but is there a good cultural fit with you as an organisation, especially in the services type thing, and if it's a long project, for example. Can I just give you an example, actually? Just recently in the organisation I was in previously, it was a £9 million spend, so it wasn't insignificant. And we'd gone through the evaluation process to see whether the cost benefits were right, the product was right, the timeline was right, etc., etc. And the final piece of work that needed to be done was the last two suppliers needed to present to the board of directors. Now, it's a family-run business, so it's relatively small. So the two suppliers were presenting the product and how they can do it. And I think what the board were looking for was a good cultural fit with the supplier. And one organisation had the top guy had been flown in from India, and there was the board directors sitting around, and he opened up and did the presentation, this top guy from the supplier, and then he subsequently went and sat down and let his guys carry on doing the presentation, and then he went and picked up his mobile phone and started working on his mobile phone at the front of the table, just like this. Now, culturally fit in a family-run organisation, that was a no-no. So I think it's not just about the product and the cost and the benefits and the timeline, but there's also this making sure that you understand the culture of the organisation and you can prove that you can actually fit in with that organisation. So, because that's the final decision. Obviously, the one on the mobile phone didn't get the business. They lost £7 million because their top guy was too digitalised, I guess. Very rude. And so it's not just the tangible things you need to think about in terms of the final decision making, but it's the other cultural type things as well, really important.
I think that the change that we're seeing is one of there now being multiple modes of technology deployment. I'm not, Bryan and I were talking about this earlier, but I'm not a big fan of the Gartner bimodal model because it is crap. But harsh but fair. But I think there are multiple modes of operation that need to exist in organisations today to be able to take advantage of technology and to be able to implement change within organisations. The way about thinking about this that I'm playing with at the moment and being using with people who are outside of the technology community is that the three stages of technology evolution. The first stage of technology evolution is the toy stage, which is where people have this new thing and other people look at it and go, what the bloody hell's that for? And the answer is not sure, really. And that stage is really unsettling to traditional business models for how you manage technology, because it makes no sense at all, because there isn't a requirement. There are some technologies at that stage at the moment. I think virtual reality is at that stage. It's a novelty, it's a toy. There's potentially fantastically interesting things to come from it, but I don't know. You've got some that never exit the toy stage. 3D television. They've been hacking away at that since the 1950s and still nobody wants it. But there's an importance for organisations to be able to work at that toy stage, because what it does is it creates the organisational muscles that are needed to be able to be curious and to be able to spot when things start to go to the next stage, which is the disruptive stage. The disruptive stage is where a technology can be used to be able to get some sort of competitive advantage. At that stage, you need to be working collaboratively with suppliers. You need to be able to work in ways that don't have predetermined outputs, small, iterative, scale things that work. There won't be big business cases. There won't be business cases that can show definite return on investment, so you need to have selling models that reflect that, as well as the buying organisation needing to have the process models to be able to deal with that. And that's where the interesting stuff around digital is at the moment. Once things have gone through the disruptive phase, we then get to the obvious phase, which is where in hindsight you can look back and say, the internet, yes, of course that was going to change the world. Everybody could see that. If you think back to the 90s and how, the Daily Mail in particular, who these days make their entire business out of selling soft porn and celebrity tittle-tattle online, but in the 90s was saying that the internet was a thing of evil, because then, of course, it was still seen as this disruptive thing that wasn't anything. Now, the purchasing models for the obvious stuff are pretty much as they always have been, which is you can specify, procure, build, deploy. And that's a business case where actually it's always going to be a cost-driven thing, to my mind, and it will always be about being able to screw down the supplier as much as you can to be able to get the best value return. The other stages, though, it's not about a requirement, or if it is about a requirement, it will be defined in conjunction with supplier or suppliers, and we need ways about being able to engage with people that enables that to happen. And I think client organisations, customer organisations are struggling to come up with the processes and method to be able to do that at the moment as well, so there's a lot of flux and flexibility in there.
Okay, that's good. Now, my job as an editor is trying to understand and second guess the sort of information that you guys need from an editorial perspective to help you do your jobs better. And see, a lot of what the people in this room are doing as well is around trying to come up with content and information to help you make decisions, clearly to help you make decisions in their favour. Now, you've touched on this to a certain extent, but it's worth just reviewing. What is specifically is the information that you use or that you need to help you make buying decisions? And perhaps if you can give an example, whether that may be of some information you've got from Computer Weekly or Matt, an inferior rival, like you mentioned earlier on, then it'd just be interesting. But really, just what's the information you need? Where do you go to get it? How do you find it? Louise?
Yeah, so I did sort of touch on it earlier, but so I mean, it is what guarantee am I going to have that the price you've quoted is going to be the price I end up paying, especially when it comes a T&M type project. What makes you better than your competitors? I love disruptive suppliers. I love innovation. I love suppliers that challenge us as an organisation. But what guarantee have we got that you can give us something different? What's your niche thing that makes you better from the competitors, especially on a commodity type product as well? And really, we need to prove its value for money. So it's all right selling us a product, but how do I know that that's going to be value for money? So again, compared to your competitors, show me what else you're going to give me in terms of skin in the game or a bit of investment to help me look at my business, to take me to the next stage. And how you're going to partner with us going forward as well, because it's not just buying a product and running away. I'd like to make sure if we're going to start building a relationship with a partner, it becomes a real partnership and you're continuously there and we can start sounding off with each other. So it's understanding not just the basic information in terms of cost, quality, time and guarantee that you can actually deliver what you said you were going to deliver, but the other sort of information, again the softer information, would be really useful to know how we move forward as a partner. And then obviously case studies and talking to other customers where you've done that same sort of thing before.
In the scale of people who are like leading edge, bleeding edge of using of new technologies and people who are lawyers, I'm more towards that end, although I know many people who are far more advanced than I. But for me, social networks are the starting point for most information these days. So if I get to something on Computer Weekly, it is almost certainly because it's been referenced either by Bryan, who I follow, or by others who have pointed me to an article that has somehow been able to be serendipitously there when I need it to be. I use things like Twitter in particular as a way to be able to get a bit of random input, but also it's a very powerful tool to be able to find out things I'm looking for. Similarly with LinkedIn, what will happen with LinkedIn as it becomes merged into the Office suite, who knows? I, as a result of that, would say a couple of things. First of all, if you're using channels that are sort of media channels to be able to reach market, you need to think about, well, what is that media channel doing on its editorial side to be able to extend its reach through social? Because that's really vitally important to reach some of us, and I think will increasingly become important. The other thing is, if you are using social channels yourself, to be able to gear those to be responsive rather than just outbound, cheap marketing channel, which too many organisations still see things like Twitter and LinkedIn as being a way to be able to put adverts up for next to nothing. I'll give you a very specific example of this. I want to do some stuff with HTC. Anybody from HTC in the room? Damn. I want to do some stuff with HTC and their Vive and their VR headset that launched this month. I tweeted them because I needed to find out if it was actually going to be available if I placed an order, because it was very non-specific on the site about what was going on. I both tweeted them and I also direct messaged on LinkedIn their UK and Europe head of marketing, and I received nothing in response. Now, what does that leave me thinking about HTC as a supplier?
Well, some of these next questions we've pretty much answered, so I'll just run quickly through them. This one perhaps was you touched on this, Matt, earlier on when you said about there is no such thing as a decision maker. How who is involved in making a decision these days? Who among your team, among the organisation, is involved in making decisions, and how do the information needs differ among the people in who are influences on that, Louise?
Yeah, so I mean, many different organisations I've worked in have a different governance process, I guess, in terms of making decisions. I've been obviously from HMRC, you can imagine that's probably bureaucratic and it takes ages, and every man and his dog needs to be involved in making a decision, through to the small family-run business, which is relatively quick and agile. I think where I am at the moment is the decisions, if we know it's the right thing to do, I'm trying to get more in terms of the business involved in making decisions. So if we're solving a problem on behalf of a business, it's a business need, then I think we need to be bringing far more of our business users as customers within IT involved in the decision making, because historically IT have always been seen to doing it to the business, and then it's hard to adopt and accept. So I'm trying to turn that around and make it more of a culture in EBRD where the business are involved in those decisions. And it's the business problems we're solving. So it's actually building that business relationship up with IT being the glue between our internal customers and the suppliers. So business decisions ultimately would be the business owner who's receiving the service. Obviously finance always need to be involved in it, or procurement in terms of cost and benefits and making sure that's being delivered as well. I tend to like to get legal involved very early on. It depends on the type of product or service, but if it's a long product, it's a long service that's being delivered, then getting legal involved very early in the process to make sure we're all agreeing our T's and C's so that doesn't slow the process down at the back end, which is hugely frustrating for everybody. And then obviously the IT person who's providing the service on behalf of the customer. So there's usually 3 or 4 people that make decisions, and I think when you're targeting, you need to make sure you're looking at it through the lens of each one of those 4 types of people in terms of what do you think they're going to want to know and what they're going to want to hear in terms of the information from you to make their decision a lot easier.
Cool. In the current organisation I'm working in, it's so complex because it's a partnership, and so therefore there's so many vested interests and owners of the company. It's very complicated. I don't think there's ever going to be a single case which is anything like any other. I think, though, as a rule, you should be thinking, if you are looking to work out who it is you are selling to, you've got to get some sort of segmentation of that complex market now, because it's not enough for most, unless it's a very trivial purchase. In any organisation, you could be having to appeal to a very broad cross-section of people for that decision to happen. And so that spans across business functions, that spans across support functions, that spans across seniority, from people who will allow something to happen because they have technical control, through to people who will give permission for something to happen because they have managerial control. Again, this comes down, certainly for anything that is significant in purchase cost or license cost or service cost, you've got to know the customer to work that out. And actually, in many ways, you might be able to help the success of a project for your client if you can get more into understanding what it is that the client needs to do to be able to influence adequately within their organisation. That's not a simple answer, but it's not the nature of influence and decision making in organisations for technology is getting increasingly complicated, I've got no doubt.
I'm keen to make sure we've still got time to take some questions from the audience. I'm just going to rush through some of these again. Just as a quick concluding question from my bit, and then I'll open it up to the audience. If you could give each of you one piece of advice to the audience on how best to engage with you and your peers, what do you think that one piece of advice would be, Louise?
I think help me on my journey, and especially in the transformation. So understand my vision, understand where I'm trying to go, and come to me with innovative ideas that are going to help me get on that journey. But I also need flexibility and agility. When I say that, I need to be able to get responses really, really quickly, because in a transformational world, when you've got a bit of a burning platform, you just want to snappy answers and you want to just get things delivered really, really quickly. So it's speed as well in terms of responses.
Okay. And Matt?
From my own experience as a marketer, I was very influenced as a guy called Grant LeBoff, who wrote a book called Sticky Marketing. And the core idea that he has is that every piece of marketing should have inherent value in itself to the people who are being marketed to. And that, I think, is a really interesting and useful way to be able to start to think about how you start to create an audience of people with whom you have a relationship to be able to move them down a pipeline or a funnel or whatever we want to call it. But it has to start with something that is of value to me, not something that tells me about... I can look up your product details on your website. It doesn't help me. If there's something that engages me because it's of value to me and doesn't assume that it's going to just lead to an immediate transaction, that's where I'd start.
Okay, thank you guys. Okay, let's open it out to the floor then, give you guys an opportunity to put any questions you've got to these two prospective leads sitting up the front above you. Any volunteers to offer a first question? Lady here, have we got mics or? Right at the very back. Sorry. Do you want to ask Harry? Go on.
Okay, so Louise, you say you work with the business people and the IT people and you want to come together. Who drives it? Is it the business people or the IT people? And how do they find the information? It's the business people.
Okay, so it's a weird answer, but it starts at the beginning of the year when we're doing our planning process to understand what our user requirements are or the business problems they're trying to solve. But the way we'd shape the IT organisation is you'd have a account management function or a glue between the business and IT, and it'd be those people that would be continuously looking at what are the demands of the business, but not just a one-way flow. Those people would also be the flow in terms of the business, and I've found this great product that's going to help you solve your problem. So it's more innovative ways as well. So it's within the IT function and account management function that work really closely and collaboratively on a day-to-day basis, understanding the business needs, so they can then provide solutions to those needs, but also innovative to try and come up with ideas to say, did you know if we did this, we could grow your business by 20%? And here's a product that's going to do it. So it's within IT.
Matt, anything you want to add on that?
I just coming back to that point about how I think for outside of the IT community, it's actually the general news and media agenda, which is where, AI at the moment is the big thing. Before that, it was cloud. If you think about how that got to being on mainstream news, which is probably where that interest started. So that's a big PR thing you need to think about in terms of marketing now. PR is your friend to be able to get that stuff out at that level, but that's hard and you're competing with a lot of other stuff there.
Cool. Some more questions? Who's next? Lady at the front here.
Hiya, I'm going to shout too.
Thanks.
I think you've answered this a little bit, Matt, in your comments around social media, but when you have constructed a project, you know what your intention is, and you're going to invite your suppliers in. Are there any specific marketing tactics that make you choose that list of suppliers or respond more favourably towards the supplier? Or do you have another agenda for how you decide who you're going to invite in to pitch for you?
Would depend on the sort of project and the sort of scale. So the network that I have, and I mean that in a broader sense, not just how many people I have connected on LinkedIn or Facebook or whatever, but my network 20 odd years into my career is an important first starting point to be able to understand. If it's if I'm working in, I did some work in central government, at that stage you look into a much more formal process of the kind of compliance to procurement processes that actually take you in a different direction, which means you have to be exhaustive in it. I think one of the big challenges today is how do you go about finding the interesting stuff, and actually the interesting stuff increasingly is in the startup community. So to that extent, we're working with open innovation group called Digital Catapult. There are other groups I know of as well, where what they do is they act as a broker between traditional businesses and the startup scene, and that's going to be an increasingly important way, I think, for organisations to find. And of course for established technology businesses, you look like granddads at discos.
And I'm very similar. I mean, first of all, my first thoughts would be I've got a huge network, so understanding what other people are doing and what products and what suppliers they're talking to. Also, our existing supplier base, because they should be our thought leaders. They should effectively know our business so well. They've been working with us for so long, so they'd be involved in it. And the niche tech type products and the small products as well. So, I mean, it's a combination of all three, really, that we would look at.
Thanks.
Okay, we've got time probably for a couple more questions. If anybody cares to take the opportunity? Yes, lady there in the black jacket.
So, following on from your last comments then, so would you say then that businesses are happier to be early adopters of technology if they can see the relevance? As previously it was, very reliant on case studies, etc. You had to prove it within the market. But it sounds like if you can see the usefulness of it, you will consider a solution.
It depends on the business and the maturity of the business, and there's a whole bunch of factors on that. I think those organisations and businesses that are going to be able to take real advantage of what this thing is we call digital will be those ones who will do small scale investment, they'll basically manage a portfolio of risk-based investments which they know most of them will fail. And those ones will get it. I think that is a massive leap culturally and behaviourally for most significant scale organisations, because they're so wedded into this idea of you cannot do anything unless there is return on investment. Now, of course, the reality is return on investment calculations in business cases have been made up fictions forever. But if you don't have case studies upon which to build your fiction, you don't have the background data to build that tower of nonsense. Is that unfair?
No. Yes, I think there's two things again focus on. We've got to get on with delivering the business needs things that we've got today on the pipeline, and that's obviously a process. But yeah, we like the things, the innovation, the agile, the little try and testing new products to come up with ideas. We love doing things like hackathons and bringing suppliers in and motivating the internal teams and saying we've got these business problems. What quick things can we do to solve those problems? So fail fast, yeah, some of those things may never ever work, but if you don't try, you don't know. But it could be one of those nuggets that actually takes you as being away from the competitive advantage and your lead. So it's doing both things in parallel and yeah, trying both.
And actually, if I had a fiver for every time in the last 5 or 6 years I've heard the phrase, yeah, we want to be really innovative, can you show us somebody who's done this before? I'd have about 75 quid. But I hear it a lot.
Cool. We've got time for one more question. Yeah, gentleman in the front.
Thanks a lot. So this question to Matt. You mentioned earlier around the social media and how that can influence your decision-making process. And really, what I understood it was the more the association with people who you value their opinion. Yeah. Can you give an example of what kind of information was shared that way? Is it PR material? Is it specific marketing material that was created?
Can be all sorts. I will tell you one specific example that happened a couple of days ago, which was this is specific in the legal sector. LexisNexis, who are one of the big two providers of information services into the legal space. I picked up on a piece of research that I think they commissioned through the University of Cambridge, looking at disruption in the legal services industry. And actually that was something that Mark, who is their head of business development, but who I know quite well and we've caught up every so often, posted on LinkedIn. So actually it was direct from the source, that, but then the actual content itself had some, we've all done those research reports, the one where you phone up 20 mates and say, what do you think of this? And then you publish out a white paper. Actually getting a University of Cambridge business professor to do some proper research and then publish it through Cambridge, it gives me the credibility to then be able to share that internally. And it wasn't done as infographics either. But I know a lot of people like that.
Cool.
And I've got loads of my more recent innovative ideas. It's been picked up from LinkedIn. So I've got people in my network are posting things about, I've seen this new great product that's out there, artificial intelligence, or I built the whole smart store for Specsavers based on getting products off LinkedIn in terms of what other people have done as well. So that really for me is where I'm going. I'm not into your tweets and all that sort of stuff, although I should be, but LinkedIn is my Bible. I look at it 20 times a day. And if I see something I find really exciting, I like it or share it as well. So I've got 2,000 people in my network. So, and most of them are IT people that I've picked up over the years that are doing the same sort of thing. And we're doing the same. That's the place to go, I think, now.
Okay, cool. Thanks, guys. Thank you for your comments there. One of the interesting things I think, if any of you have been coming regularly to these events over the last few years, I've been running this panel for a few years now, and I think as my summary of this, it's been really interesting how over that period of time to see how much more the messages from these guys and their peers are, don't just come in and sell me product. Don't just tell me what your product is. We want people who can really help us to understand how we can improve our business, how we can innovate, how we can transform the business and do things better. So I'm sure an interesting set of challenges there for all of you, and I hope you've found that useful. That's all from this session. Thanks very much for listening. If you could just show your appreciation for Louise McCarthy and Matt Ballantyne.